welcome to the Australian capital city of Canberra. Directly behind is Parliament House, the same building that can be found on the $5 note. Today, I'll be flying with FlyPelican on their inaugural Jetstream 32 service bound for Melbourne Avalon Airport.
Let's go! But, here we go now! Batman scoop on the mic, mix in the mix on the wheels of steel. This is what I was fucking born to do! Let's go!
When I first learnt about this new route, approximately 2 months prior to this video's filming, I knew that this would be the perfect opportunity for me to try one of the most unique inaugural flights that I have ever taken, and boy oh boy did this flight not disappoint. FlyPelican Airlines is an Australian regional airline based on the east coast of the country, out of their primary base, Newcastle Airport, otherwise known as RAF Base Williamtown. They currently operate a fleet consisting of only British-built Jetstream 32s, which currently serves 7 destinations across the southeast region. Often forgotten by non-Australians, Canberra is the capital city of the country, created in 1913 due to a disagreement over whether Sydney or Melbourne should become the capital city. Situated approximately 150 kilometres from the coast, Canberra is also the 8th largest city in the country and has earned itself the title of Australia's bush capital. Serving the territory, the city, and the nearby New South Wales town of Queanbeyan is Canberra International Airport, the largest airport in the general region, and is almost exclusively a domestic airport. However, there is one singular route to Fiji and a new route to Doha via Melbourne that keeps this airport's status as an international airport alive. From here, you can fly on 6 different airlines to 12 destinations, mainly in New South Wales.
Let's go!
Upon arrival at the airport, I swiftly made my way inside the terminal building to begin the check-in process. FlyPelican has a semi-dynamic check-in area in the sense that they don't necessarily use the same check-in counter every time. However, they tend to use counter 16, which is adjacent to Link Airways and Virgin Australia, and was also the same check-in counter for today. Check-in this morning was very quick and easy. I originally booked seat 1 Alpha for the flight, but unfortunately due to weight and balance issues and the flight being less than half full, I was moved to an alternate seat in the back. After I had received my boarding pass, I promptly made my way to the security checkpoint, which is also located in the centre of the building. Security today was certainly not the most friendly, as I was told you are not permitted to film inside this airport at all. To which I called them out immediately, saying, "You know that's not true, and don't lie to people." Other than that, the process couldn't have been easier. Immediately after security is a large open area with floor-to-ceiling windows and the bronze sculpture dubbed Unfurling by artist Andrew Rogers. There are also window views below, viewing the bags as they make their way to the waiting aircraft, but the glass is rather scratched and is kinda difficult to see through. Whilst we wait for today's aircraft to arrive, let's take a look around Canberra Airport. Canberra Airport has a parabolic linear-style terminal design that faces to the northeast, with gates on the eastern side and shops and lounges on the western side. Gate 14, the southerlymost gate, is generally used by the QantasLink -8 services. Gates 13 through 9 are almost exclusively used by QantasLink, using their larger A220s and E190s. They also use the occasional 737. At Gate 10, there is the entrance to the Qantas Club and the business class lounge. This is also the starting point for the shops, which continue towards security. As stated earlier, in the centre of the building is the security checkpoint and general meeting area, which I opted to stay away from. Continuing onward, Gate 8 and 7 are generally used by low-cost carrier Jetstar, as well as some Virgin Australia flights. Adjacent to Gate 6 is the Virgin Australia Business Class Lounge, which, interestingly, is the only Virgin Australia lounge that I have never visited before. Gate 5 is an international gate, used by Fiji Airways and previously Batik Air, Singapore Airlines and Qatar. This gate can also be converted back into a domestic gate using glass partitions. And finally, gates 3 and 4 are almost exclusively used by small airlines, notably Link Airways and FlyPelican. However, that wasn't the case for today's flight. Not long after I had arrived at the airport, so did that of the aircraft that's about to take me south to Victoria, which today is a British Aerospace Jetstream 32 registered as Victor Hotel Oscar Tango Echo. Construction of this airframe was completed at the British Aerospace Factory in Prestwick, Scotland in 1993. She first flew for Regional Airlines of France in September of the same year, before moving to Air Normandie in 1999 and then Trident Aviation in 2001. She was finally sold to Aeropelican in October of 2006, and she was repainted in her current livery, to where she has been ever since, which makes this aircraft 32 years old. Boarding commenced shortly after the aircraft had arrived at Gate 6. As the aircraft is not attached to a jet bridge, all passengers are required to walk across the apron, guided by the first officer to the aircraft, an avgeek's wet dream. FlyPelican's Jetstream 32s all have the exact same configuration, with 19 standard seats in the expected 1-2 layout. This afternoon, I shall be seated in 7 Alpha on the left-hand side or port side of the aircraft. Unfortunately, there is no known data about the FlyPelican seat. However, the seat itself features 31 inches or 78 centimeters of pitch and 19 inches or 48 centimeters of width. There is a small laptop-sized tray table that folds down but does not extend. In the seat pocket, you'll find a safety card only. Above are individual reading lights and air vents. Soon the cabin door was closed and the props began to turn, 15 minutes behind our scheduled departure time. We taxied to runway 35 via Charlie, Bravo and Papa.
Aeropelican 351, Canberra Tower, line up on my C5.
Now please enjoy this unedited takeoff.
Aeropelican 351, signing left 320, runway 35, clear for takeoff. Pelican 351, contact depart.
Departure Pelican 351, stay up.
After takeoff, we made a series of left-hand turns over the city, which set up our southwesterly course for Avalon. Flight time today is 1 hour and 35 minutes, covering a distance of 362 miles or 582 kilometers, cruising at 18,000 and 9,400 feet. Once in the air, it was only a matter of time before the clouds surrounded the aircraft. But just prior to that, we passed over the Australian capital city of Canberra, with notable sights being visible, such as the Australian War Memorial, Questacon and Parliament House, which is where this trip started. Due to the aircraft's size, there is no flight attendant on board, and as such there is no proper in-flight service. However, during boarding, all passengers are invited to grab a snack and a decently sized water bottle from Eskies at the entrance of the aircraft. I chose the ginger cookies, which were really nice and had a strong ginger flavour. Also on offer were shortbread biscuits, Anzac biscuits, chocolate chip cookies, and strawberry jam biscuits. On board the aircraft is a single lavatory located at the rear of the aircraft, which, when closed, is extremely unique, as the toilet door closes off the cabin, making the aircraft door, the outside door, a part of the toilet. However, there is also everything you would typically expect for an aircraft of this size, including scented hand soap. When I returned to my seat, the whole atmosphere on board changed, and yes, that pun was intentional.
Pelican 351, copied. There is no other traffic. Pelican 351, thank you. Pelican 351, when you do get down and configure, just let me know if everything's okay, please. Pelican 351,
I distinctly remember hearing a high-pitched sound coming from the toilet, which made myself and the three other people around me turn our heads, wondering, what was that? Following this, the cabin became extremely loud, more than usual, and we commenced a very rapid descent down to just over 9,400 feet. Upon reaching our cruising altitude, the first officer made an announcement.
At this stage, we will proceed to Avalon as planned, so it's going to take a bit longer. I do apologise for the noise, because we will be playing a bit lower, but we will expect to be touchdown at Avalon just after 2:35 at this stage. Thank you.
We also flew low enough to the ground that I was able to pick up cell service, and I quickly realised that we were squawking 7700, the general emergency squawk code, and I then knew that things were serious. The passengers remained calm on board, and no real panic ensued, but the nervousness amongst the non-av geeks was certainly noticeable. Having cleared the low-pressure system over the state, the ground revealed the city of Melbourne below, and I was able to see the many different suburbs of the city, as well as the Essendon Fields airfield and Melbourne's main international airport, Tullamarine, which was directly below the aircraft. Soon we commenced our descent into Avalon. As the aircraft began its descent over the industrial area of West Melbourne, I ensured that my seatbelt was fastened tightly, and I also studied the safety card one final time. I then glued my eyes to the window, unsure of how rough today's approach and landing was going to be. When flying into Avalon, there is no real best side of the aircraft to sit on, as both sides have their pros and cons. However, I generally recommend the left side, as you'll get to see the Melbourne CBD and suburbs as well as Geelong on approach, whilst the right hand side will see the airfield, Port Phillip or You Yang's Regional Park, and this is of course weather permitting.
Through to vacated taxiway Bravo, vacated the northern end, runway 36 clear to land.
Roll through to vacate Bravo, northern end, 36 clear to land, Pelican 351.
Now please enjoy this unedited landing. After landing, we taxied back to the terminal via runway 36 and Bravo. We pulled in onto stand 1, 32 minutes behind our scheduled arrival time. Before stepping off the aircraft, I had a brief word with the captain about the events that transpired on board, which for me cleared up a lot of suspicions that I had, including that we did lose cabin pressure around 1:44 PM. I then stepped onto the apron and breathed a sigh of relief before turning my attention towards having a conversation with the ground staff and fellow avgeeks on board. So, I just flew on the inaugural FlyPelican Canberra to Avalon service. What are my thoughts? Well, as always, let's start from the beginning. Check-in at Canberra was typical for what you would expect from FlyPelican, a nice, friendly and easy experience. Security was rather hostile towards me, and they weren't super friendly to other passengers either, which I personally think was completely unacceptable, regardless of their role. Despite the seat dimensions being comparable to a Qantas 737, I felt rather cramped in this particular seat. This may have been due to my bag under the seat in front of me limiting my foot space, as all cabin baggage should have actually gone into the hold. The food was pretty typical for FlyPelican, however, I would like to see something more savoury on their flights, maybe some cheese and crackers or something like what is served on Qantas Link. Despite not having a flight attendant on board, they did a pretty good job service-wise. The pilots were very friendly and kept us informed about everything on board. And speaking of which, whilst yesterday's flight turned into an emergency situation, I don't think it's fair to bring Pelican down for this, as it can happen to any airline, but it's the way they responded to it afterwards that doesn't really sit right with me. Upon arrival into Avalon, we were supposed to get a cake-cutting ceremony, as well as potential speeches from FlyPelican and Avalon airport officials, and even an appearance on the news. However, all of this was promptly cancelled, and as quoted by an Avalon airport ground staff member, this was all brushed under the rug. And finally, I paid $250 for this one-way flight, which is about what you would expect for this flight. So, would I recommend you to take this flight? Well, if you live in Canberra or Geelong, and you wish to travel between these cities, there's no doubt about it, I definitely would recommend it. But if you need to get to the city of Melbourne itself, then honestly, I'd just choose one of the three big players, Qantas, Virgin or Jetstar, and fly to Tullamarine instead. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and make sure you check out my other videos if you want to see more. And I have said this before, but I now have a Discord server. Feel free to join. The link can be found at the top of the description. And as always, feel free to press the notification button too, as it will let you know whenever I upload, which happens every Friday at 8 PM Sydney time. And I hope to see you all again in the next one. See you later!